with a prayer from Commissioner Val and the Pledge of Allegiance from Commissioner Yeager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight giving you honor and praise, thanking you, Lord, for every blessing that you send to us each and every day, most of all for our salvation, Lord, for our power and prayer. We ask you to forgive us, Lord, where we fail you. Lord, our sins we commit against you, cleanse us tonight. Father, we ask that you remember our Chairman Wandell, tonight as he's sick. Father, we pray that you touch his body with your healing hand, Lord, as we've seen you do. We pray, God, that you'd be with this group tonight, Father, as we discuss the business to represent your people. Give us discernment with our hearts, with our minds. All this we ask in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of agenda or additions or changes. Commissioner McCamey.
I'd like to add an item under new business, and that's the, asking the commission to approve seal bids on 205 South Main, and ask the purchasing agent to handle that. To accept seal bids on 205 South Main Street for the purchasing agent, and to have the purchasing agent to have all bidders to tell what the purpose that they want to bid on the building is for.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That'll be added under new business. Any other changes? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Motion, we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next is we're going to have appearance of citizens for anything that's not on the agenda. Anyone want to come forward and speak? Okay. Next is the Election Commission, and I think we've come to an agreement before the meeting, and the mayor's going to speak on that real quick.
Yes, sir. The room assignments still stand, but in order to accommodate the elections, we're going to wait for the move for the machines until November. So in the meantime, we can do some shifting. We can also get the vault ready for those election machines, and we've got that worked out.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. You're up next.
okay. The next item on the agenda is, many of you have probably seen across Kentucky, across Virginia, there are some resolutions regarding the Second Amendment, in support of the Second Amendment. And a lot of this stems from some legislation that is moving forward in Virginia. And so, for instance, one of the bills there in Virginia seeks to ban some activities such as instruction and training using firearms, assembling with others to target shoot in a gun range, and some other legislation such as that. And so a lot of counties in Tennessee, as well as our neighbors in Kentucky, have been passing resolutions to send a message in opposition to that kind of effort at the state level. And so far in Tennessee, municipalities that have passed a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution are Polk County, Blount County, Monroe County, Loudoun County, Roane County, Carter County, the town of Dandridge, Jefferson County, Sevier County, Hamlin County, Sullivan County, Cocke County, Claiborne County, and Unicoi County. Municipalities that have so far passed a more generic Second Amendment resolution is Greene County. Some municipalities that have passed preservation ordinances, Dyer County, Madison County, Fayette County. Some of the municipalities that are having a hearing soon or a vote soon, Johnson County, Granger County, Hawkins County, the city of Dunlap. And then other counties or cities that have efforts to get a hearing or have a vote soon, Washington County, Union County, Knox County, Scott County, Morgan County, Cumberland County, Jackson County, Sequatchie County, Jackson County, oh, I'm sorry, I said that one, Grundy County, Franklin County, Cannon County, Trousdale County, Wilson County, Rutherford County, Bedford County, and Henderson County. I've had numerous citizens reach out to me about Anderson County doing such a resolution, and so I did not want to blindside commission by bringing one, but instead I submitted to you a couple of sample resolutions. And then I also tonight, if you want to see Roane County's, since they're our direct neighbor and we share the city of Oak Ridge with Roane County, I brought theirs if you want to see theirs as well, but I thought I would ask for authorization to draft a resolution of support of the Second Amendment along the lines of what I've submitted to you from, I put in there Jefferson County as an example, and then also, I believe Sullivan County was the other one. Anyhow, that's what I'm asking for tonight.
Commissioner Meade.
Yeah, this is not something that is localized to Tennessee. I almost every year attend the National Gun Rights Policy Conferences. Last year it was in Phoenix. And there was a bunch of groups there that were talking about how this is being done all over the country. It doesn't really change what the law, it doesn't actually change any law, because the law already supports what these policies say, but it's just a way of saying, look, we don't want these things to be changed. And I'm very much in favor of that, because usually when we lose our rights, it's not one big step. It's they take a little, they take a little, they take a little, they take a little, and pretty soon you're going, God, you mean it's illegal to do this or it's illegal to do that? And then it's really hard to get them turned around. It can take years. One of the things, I got a thing I'm going to talk about later that's something the mayor asked about some months ago, and now it looks like we've got a solution. And I'll talk about when the time comes. But this is the thing I fully support. We just have to, in fact, I was given a bunch of different Second Amendment policies and resolutions from different states, but a lot of them had stuff in it that had nothing to do with Tennessee law. And so I'd been asking actually for some from the different counties that I knew had worked on it. So anyhow, I'm fully supporting this. I look forward to seeing what they have. And do we need I don't think we need a motion. It's just a sense of the board.
I would like one, and I would like some input on what you would like to see in there. Otherwise, I can just work on it myself. So
We need to see
there,
that.
a lot of them
I
are
would
very
be glad to
similar.
work with the mayor on this.
Okay.
And I would be willing to make a motion to move ahead with this and bring it forward at the appropriate time for review and approval by full commission.
We have a motion and second. Discussion on the motion.
Well, you had mentioned that some counties and cities were in the process of voting on it.
Yes,
Is that the people voting on it, or is that just
their
their
bodies,
legislative
so
body?
their legislative bodies.
Okay.
Yes.
So it wouldn't go to a referendum
No.
by the
No.
people, okay.
And I think we've got a large consortium of people here that's probably here just for this subject. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Commissioner Chris.
I don't see a need to reinforce the Second Amendment. It's in our Constitution. The Constitution is protected. We got people dying at this moment, serving our country, defending that Constitution, and I see that that will continue from now on. So I'm not going to vote for it.
Any other discussion? Anyone from the audience like to speak?
I'm Abby Moore. I live at 109 Wakefield Road in Oak Ridge. I've lived there over 20 years. I question the necessity of this resolution. The Second Amendment is not under attack. I am concerned that this resolution will be used to state that this county will not use resources to enforce gun control legislation it deems unconstitutional. I counter that any resolution of this nature is likely unconstitutional. I understand it's not binding, but I question that it could be deemed unconstitutional and could be challenged not only by individuals, but organizations such as the American Civil Liberties Union. I would rather see the commission spend time exploring common sense gun control legislation, which can work to make our community safer. I request that the commission does not authorize nor draft or ultimately pass this resolution or anything like it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Just come forward and state your name and address, please.
My name's Chris. I live in Highway Drive in Clinton.
Chris, what's your last name, Chris?
It's Sutoros.
Okay.
I've never addressed anything like this before, ever. You know, I started out here in Clinton. I grew up here. I moved to Virginia several years ago, and I still have family that lives there, and I see what they're going through right now. My father-in-law was at a meeting the other night in Harrisonburg, Virginia. This little group that's gathered tonight, this is nothing. There was 900 plus people there. You couldn't get in the door of the courthouse because they believe so strongly about what they're talking about the Second Amendment, about our country. And you, sir, you said it's protected by the Constitution of the United States, and it is. But that Constitution is under attack. Every single day it's under attack. Everyone's, oh, it's open to interpretation. It is not. Our founding fathers wrote that, and it is not open to interpretation. Not one little bit of it. People who had more at stake than anybody in this room wrote that to protect us, the people here in this county. Now, you said there's people dying overseas. They are. I've seen it. It's bad. People get killed every day over there. And you say they're defending our Constitution. Yeah, that's their job. But our job here at home is to defend it and to watch their back and to stand up for what they can't be here to talk about tonight. Now, I'm not a very good public speaker. I'm not. I'm the guy that sits in the back at church and just watches things, you know, and listens to the preacher. That's what I do every Sunday. And then, after church is over, I gather my two boys and we go get something to eat. And generally, we go shoot a little bit, me and my two boys. One turns 8 Thursday. The other one turns 15 next week. And I want to preserve that for those two boys and for the children that they're going to have. You know, I feel so strongly about this. And it's not, you know, you say, well, it's not to, you know, it's defended by the Constitution and this and that. And it is, but here's the deal. If we don't stand up and speak now and basically write this out and say, look, leave us alone. You take your federal government and you could take it someplace else. I love my country, and I would die for it in a heartbeat. No questions asked. I would take a bullet for any person in this room. And anyone that knows me, knows my character, knows that it will be so. I don't care a bit to do it. So what we're asking for you is to stand up for us who stand up for you. I love everybody in this room. I love everybody in this county. I moved back from Virginia to come here. I hated it up there. It was so oppressive. It's a Commonwealth state. And those people right there, up there right now are fighting their guts out. I don't want that to happen to this place. I love this place too much. I love my home. I love Clinton. We've got good people. We've got a good sheriff. We've got good law enforcement in the county. All we need is for you guys to stand up and say, you can take your trampling of our rights and take it someplace else, because we're not going to put up with it. We're done with it. It starts right here. And if everybody folds and you just fold up and say, well, you know, that's the first step. The second step, you start losing everything else. You want to go to some other countries and see how they live? It's a bad place. You oppose the government in some other countries, and guess what happens? You die. Not only you, they'll kill your family too. I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but their rights were taken away. Little piece at a time, just like you said, little piece at a time. You know, people talk about, oh, you can do this and you can do that. But it starts right here with this group of people right here standing up for us in our county. I don't care what other counties do. I care about Anderson County, and I care about the city of Clinton. My children's got to grow up here. And it's up to you people to buck up and say, we had it. I guess that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Amen, brother. Anyone else? 3 minutes, and please address the chairman.
Kind of like him, I'm not very good at public speaking, but everybody watches TV, I'm sure. You know what Pelosi's doing? She's trying to get rid of a duly elected president. They've been after him since day one. They're after our Second Amendment. They're all trying to make their own interpretation of what that means. To me, that means I should be able to bear an arm if I want to. And they say, well, the police can protect us. They can't protect us all the time. There's not enough of them. We need to be able to protect ourselves. There's crazy people out there, and there's many ways that they can harm you. One is gun. I guess that's what you see most of. But you can go in a movie theater with a can of gasoline and kill a lot more people than you kill with a gun. They ain't banning gasoline. You could run over a bunch of people with a car. They ain't banning cars. They're attacking guns. And if that is not stopped, eventually they're going to win. They're going to have these backdoor meetings, and people are going to vote to ban guns, and nobody's going to know anything about it. And like you said, once that goes in, it's hard to get it out. They'll come knocking at your door. They'll say, well, you've got a registered gun. Where is it at? I want it. You're going to bring it here, or we're going to haul you off to jail. That's what's going to happen. And I hope it don't come to this, but if things keep going like they are, that's what's going to happen. And gun control is not the way to fix these problems. I mean, I understand everybody has a right to speak, but gun control is not going to fix it. I understand that there's people that have to be investigated. You know, we need background checks on people. I believe that firmly, because there are people out there that don't need guns. And they don't need to be driving on the road either. They don't be in cars. But they get in cars anyways. So if laws are passed that restrict guns, criminals ain't going to pay attention to those laws. All you're going to do is affect people that abide by the laws. So I say to you, we need to enact that. We need to pass that, vote on it, and put it in. We need to tell the federal government that Anderson County is a Second Amendment county. We support it, and people here want to keep it, and stay off of it. Stop trampling on it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah, he gave it.
Ronnie McCain,
Yeah.
175 Robin Lane. And that's in Clinton.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Like I said, I'm not much of a speaker either. My name is Kenny Bunch. I live 208 Church Avenue, Lake City. About a year ago, I decided to retire. And I said to myself, well, what are you going to do when you retire? And with people breaking on people like that. And I never was a gun person. I had a son get killed with a gun, but it was by accident. But guns don't kill people. People kill people. And when it comes down to me taking my test and training to use that gun properly, the way as to be trained for it, let me tell you something. A cop, if they come in on you at midnight, in midnight hour, what are you going to do? You ain't going to wait time to tell the cop, tell you, hold on just a second right there before you shoot me, or before you rob me, let me call the cop? Let me tell you something. About 2 years ago, there was no man who lived over behind me. won't come in on him. Now, if he'd had something to protect himself, he'd probably been alive today. They took a hammer and beat the man in the head, beat his head in. And they said, we probably said, that don't happen to us. Let me tell you something. You don't know what's going to happen to you when you ain't. And as far as my gun right takes, I want that gun right. I love that gun right. I respect that gun. I respect it when I carry it. And I carry it because I feel it's my protection. But as far as to shoot somebody, I've never been a violent person in my life. I've never had light guns. But when they start coming in on you in your house, and the cop can't get there doing nothing, you got two choices. Either shoot the man or die yourself. That's the way they look at it. And look at that, I look at that gun as a protection. That gun right, that was given to us by our forefathers. It was given to us not for our government to take away. And just like the man said, they're taking this and they're taking that. Next thing you know, they're going to knock on your door. And if you ain't got a gun, they've done come tuck it. And the so-called good guys out there, that I call the bad, they come in to get what you got. What, like I said, what are you going to do? Ain't no who you going to call on. If you ain't got a 45, you better call on the Lord. And but like I said, I respect our gun laws. I respect every one of you in here, highly. And you're in a position that I believe was designated for you. And we ought to look up to you, but also you ought to stand for our rights too. And that's all I got to say, but like these other people, I'm just protecting my rights. And that gun, when I carry it, that protects me and my wife. Before shooting somebody, I'd rather roll over and die first. But I ain't going to stand there and let him pull a 45 at me and shoot me in between the eyes. You wouldn't either. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Bunch.
Stephen Phillips up off Mike Miller Lane, District 3. Back in November the 2nd of 1972, I took an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States. I have not been relieved of that oath, and I hate to see anybody anywhere trying to take a chunk out of the rights that was granted by the Constitution. I appreciate what you said earlier, Steve. Any little chip or chunk that's coming out of it, then it'll be hell to pay to try to get anything back. And I do request significantly that you all join, pass it on to the full commission, that we do implement a resolution like this. I know it's non-binding, it's symbolic, but sometimes at some point we need to be symbolic for what we stand for. These things are important, people. I'd hate to be a resident in the only county in the state of Tennessee that did not have one of these resolutions in place. Now, Tennessee has 95 counties, Virginia has 95. And right now, there's somewhere between 70 and 75 of them, I think, already have resolutions. And it will probably have every one of them in there before too long. So I do hope that we do continue on and put this in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Before we move on, I want to thank everyone for coming.
Can I make just a brief statement?
Oh, yes.
Right now, there is an existing law in Tennessee that prohibits the local governments or the state officials or the sheriff's departments or the local police from spending any money or using any personnel to support any kind of legal action that would violate the U.S. Constitution or the Constitution of the state of Tennessee. That was introduced by Senator Briggs in Knoxville about 3 years ago and passed into law with a overwhelming majority vote. Okay, so there's some law in place. The other thing I want to say is there was some discussion about support and defending the Constitution of the United States. In 1966, I took that oath when I joined the Navy, and a number of times when I re-enlisted or other things in the Navy. I also take that oath every time I'm sworn in as a county commissioner. What we're asking people to do is to make a statement that we're willing to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We've all taken that oath. And to not support this measure, to me, would be violating your oath of office. Because all we're saying is we want the Constitution to be followed in Tennessee, and we want all those people in a state and federal level to know that that's how the counties feel. And I think you know how I feel about this. Thank you.
Anyone else, any other commissioner? Anyway, what I was saying, I want to thank everyone for coming and for being able to express their constitutional right to free speech. Thank you. All right, we'll move on.
We need a motion?
Oh, yeah, we need a motion. We got a motion, got a second. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Support is appreciated. Do you want me to bring that back to next operations meeting?
Yes.
Okay. The next, and also, just a little FYI, as of January 7th, Virginia has 99 counties and municipalities that have passed the resolution. So that just kind of shows how important that issue is to the American people. The next item, I'm requesting a motion to establish a temporary moratorium for approval of any new TIF proposals, and that is new TIF proposals, because some documentation may still come back and need to be authorized for plans that have already been approved. And the reason is to establish a tax increment financing study and formulating committee. And as we have kind of gone through a flurry of TIF approvals lately, there's been discussion. I know I was at a meeting, for instance, with the city of Clinton, and the mayor there in the meeting asked me, you know, was I working on any kind of parameters or guidelines? I brought this up today just as a general discussion point in the Finance Committee. If you look at Davidson County as an example and Chattanooga as an example, they have retained or split the TIFs so that the general fund and the government or the debt service fund can use some of those funds instead of allowing 100% to go to the developer to use for that project. And I know this may sound like foreign language to a lot of folks, so maybe I need to back up a little bit. A tax increment financing instrument is basically a tool where developers kind of, if they don't believe that they can fund their development, then they can ask for whatever they would be paying in taxes on a constructed development, whether it's apartments or a hotel or a Tractor Supply, for instance, that they can use that value to pay their loan for development. So that would be the parking lot or other infrastructure, stormwater. Sometimes they can, if, for instance, if there's extra money, they can apply it to the actual brick and mortar, to the building itself. Now, that has to be done with the comptroller's approval, but it does not come back to commission for approval at that point. And so Davidson County put together such a committee, and I shared with you their function statement. And the goal would be, how are we doing things now? How are we awarding the TIFs now? And then do we need to put in place limitations or some design standards that really fit with the goals of Anderson County and then also meet the needs of Anderson County? So for instance, we just had a tax increase, but we have done some 100% TIF approvals. Maybe we should have retained some of that new value. Hamilton County is an example. Chattanooga retains 15%. So instead of giving 100% to develop the site, they retain 15% for debt service. Another idea is in Davidson County, for instance, and that's Nashville Metro, they were doing 20-year TIF approvals. So the council there got together and said, our whole goal as a city may change in 20 years. What may be important in this area may not be important in 10 years, let alone 20. And so they set a limitation on 10 years, the cap for a TIF approval. So those are some of the things I would like us to look at, because we don't really have time in this body to say, what does this look like? What's the return on investment? Does it really fit with what's going on in Anderson County? Do we want more of a say in what economic development area a TIF goes to? So for instance, most people, especially in the public, believe that that only goes to an area that's blighted, where you may need some economic development. And, you know, maybe it's not. Maybe the TIF is being awarded to a high development area where there's, you know, the property sales are good and the property is in demand. So those are things I would like us to look at as a county before we approve further TIF agreements. So.
I do have a comment. I don't have a motion, I have a comment.
Commissioner Yeager.
I think Mark Mamontoff, obviously, we all know who he
Yes.
is. I think I would hate to enact something and not have, and there are unintended consequences. And that's what I'm afraid of in something like this. I would like for him to have an opportunity to address us and at the same time that, you know, we just all talk about it, and he can, he's the biggest expert in the field that I've ever come across. And if we could get him to come to operations next month possibly and have a full discussion, I think that would be the most beneficial to me.
Sure. And I have actually had a meeting with him and the mayors. And then I know today the chamber had a meeting. He has conveyed that it is good to put in place, you know, you need some kind of guidance. And that's why he met with us in the first place at that request, because the county is really new to using this. And if we don't put in place some kind of rails, if you know, I don't think we want to be in the business where, and this is philosophical, I'll just go to a philosophical point here. The north end of the county, I serve on the TPO, the Transportation Planning Board. The north end of the county is the area that is targeted for all the growth through 2040. So from transportation standpoint, we have to put together 20 and 40-year transportation plans. That's where the growth is. So do we need to be awarding TIFs in a high-growth area? Or do the TIFs need to be maybe in the Rocky Top area where there's poverty, there's a depressed market, and maybe a developer really does need some infrastructure cost? And now that's a personal opinion, but I think those are things that the commission should be looking at. And when we just bring it up in terms of, well, hey, this business may come to town. I'll give you an example, and Commissioner Waddell brought this up for one of the TIFs. We approved apartments. Now, housing is an important issue, but if the county retained nothing from the new value for the next 20 years, in those apartments, our EMS is still going to serve those apartments. We're not going to have a freeze on costs or inflation, but yet we're doing that for a developer. So I think the public, when we have passed these, I have heard a lot, there's a lot of misunderstanding what's the difference between a TIF and a tax abatement, but the public sees it as, I got a tax increase, and then a developer they're allowed to take what should have been their property tax increase. It's not going to go to our schools. It's not going to go to pay the county's debt. It's not going to go to help provide law enforcement or EMS, but it's going to help the developer pay their loan. And so I think we need to bring maybe some of the folks that Oak Ridge has been a successful model with the mall. It would be good to hear Ray Evans and say, talk about the return on investment. How is this paid off for the city? And look at each of these. We're not doing that. And so that's why I think it's important, and I think from an accountability standpoint with the public, that's why we really need to go the extra mile and take a look at it. So instead of it being developer X sitting in the audience and all we hear is Tractor Supply, it makes it hard to vote on any kind of limitations or standard when the deal's already worked and you're kind of the last vote. You know, it's kind of like you're the last speaker between the dinner table, you know, the meal. It kind of makes it hard when the deal's all wrapped up and then you're just the last obstacle. So it's better to give those developers guidelines up front. What will the county do? So that's why I really, you know, bringing Mark Mamatoff, great, but I still think we need to put a committee together, and that can be people from commission, and it can also be people from the community or other experts in the field. Maybe Mark would like to help guide that committee, but I think we need to act at least on that portion.
I couldn't agree more on the B. I think the moratorium, we don't know what's in the works, and things take years sometimes. And I think a moratorium is, in my opinion, not the best way to go about it, but I do like your B.
Okay.
I'm strong in favor of your second request.
Commissioner Meade.
Yeah, I want to, a lot of things I agree with. I just want to say is that I would be opposed to a moratorium because that's making a decision now that we're not going to do something that we don't even know what the offer is. I think we need to make the decision at the time we know what the offer is, not make the decision in advance. As far as having folks that look into tax increment financing study or a foreign committee, I don't have any problem with it, of learning more about how things work. There's a couple of things I think that need to be made clear. The existing level of property taxes on that property continue to get paid.
Yes.
Okay, so that also sales taxes generated increase the revenues to the city and the county and the state. And so that's also kind of important, the way these things work. I think they need to be looked at carefully, because I've seen some that we didn't like. As far as it being all wrapped up by the time it gets to county commission, if we say no, that's it. It doesn't happen. This commission has full authority over any TIF that could take place in Anderson County. So I think we do have the control we need. I think it's a good idea to know as much about the process and also to look into any individual deal that's being made. And so I have no problem with doing those things, but I do have great problem with doing a moratorium to decide in advance that we're not going to accept an offer that might come up next week and be a great one. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see you've got temporary moratorium. Did you have a timeline in mind for?
Yes, I did put that in my letter to you all.
6 months.
Which I think for purposes of your agenda, it's usually just the cabbage is boiled down, but I put a letter in there, for instance, on the Second Amendment, and then also the TIF, and it's not to exceed 6 month
Okay,
moratorium.
so it wouldn't be necessarily forever.
No.
And so if I know we've got a matrix in place already right now, but so it seems like we could, if we did vote to have a moratorium and do the study, if something did come up, we could always, if somebody
right.
wanted to put a grocery store in Rocky Top, we could.
You could reverse the moratorium
Yeah.
as the step before you go to the TIF.
Yeah.
And, to Commissioner Meade's point, that's a great point. He referenced sales tax, but not all of these TIFs that we've done generate sales tax. So we've had a spec building for an industrial building. We've had apartments. We've had a hotel, which does generate some sales. And so that's something to look at. Do we want to only do a TIF that generates sales tax to offset? So for instance, if you look at the schools and we see the schools budget over time, it just naturally grows. It's a very large operation. And if you're freezing taxes on a major development for 20 years, you've got to come up with that money somewhere else. So it really does, and I think that's why Nashville looked at this, is because they were having to fund all of these other requirements, but yet a large part of how the city, and you've seen the incredible growth there, how the city has grown, they weren't able to get the revenue from that. So anyhow, those are, to Commissioner Mead's point, that's critical to how we want to award them.
I didn't get to attend the TIF meeting that they had, but I understand that the Industrial Development Board is already in the process of making changes.
Okay.
And Commissioner Val was there, and he, he told me a little bit about it. But they are wanting to redo some of the language and some of the guidelines. So the way I understand this is you're asking for 6 months to put a committee together and work with the Industrial Development Board to maybe come up with some new guidelines. That's the way I understand it. And as being a moratorium, it's just saying, let's, within 6 months, let's sit down with the Industrial Development Board, work through operations, and come up with a new plan that would take all these things into account. That's what
Well,
I'm getting.
yes, and I think the goal is not to linger, it's to get the work done and come back to commission, and it could be 2 months, it could be 3 months, but the goal is to get something, a better template for this body to make decisions for the taxpayers, so.
But if there's something already in the works.
Yes.
Then that would carry through. Is that
Yes.
correct? Do I have a motion or any other discussion?
I too attended the meeting at the chamber today, and I would be in full agreement of having Mr. Mamatov come and speak to full commission. In fact, Rick Meredith did tape his presentation, which he's going to make available. But I'm sure that if he were to come to full commission, that there would be quite a few people who would have questions and other things could come up. And I think it would be a benefit to the commission and to the county.
Well, I'd like to I'll make a motion then to establish a TIF study and formulating committee. Mayor, you can be the guiding hand of that, if that would be okay. And come back when they have some report or information that they can give to us.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda, commissioners continue to have concerns about the purchase of 205 South Main. And, a lot of the failures I think we've been over in the last couple of years. I know, for instance, and I haven't, we've had a lot of discussion about the valuation, what we were able to get in terms of bids from both a live auction and a sealed bid. Back in April of 2018, one of the first things we did was, we had the fire marshal out, then we inspected, then we had a roof consultant who does work for the schools come out. The roof consultant said, here's my opinion, however, there are some issues, you really need to have a structural firm come in. We hired a structural engineering firm to come in. They did an analysis and some testing, made some recommendations. We sent that back to the roof design firm. That firm came up with repairing the walls, where there's water infiltration and structural issues, and roof replacement and some of the decking. That total came up to $385,451. That doesn't address things such as the mechanical issues. It doesn't address that the gray water was draining directly into the street instead of properly draining into the sewer. And so we know there were a lot of costs, and if we want to invest in that facility, there's a start. And we can put more money into it and we can keep it. But I felt like it was time because the comments and the concern continue to circulate about the purchase and what happened with the purchase. And so I wanted to talk to you about authorizing me. This isn't something I would want to do on my own without your authorization, and talk with the county's insurance company about a possible claim, and also speaking with an attorney who has expertise in real estate law about any possible remedies to that purchase. And it's a very uncomfortable topic, but what I'm wondering, and this is why I would like to talk to our insurance company, the signatory who was listed as the buyer on the document bore the responsibility to make sure the purchase was a good purchase. And I was not a signatory on that document, and it's not a pointing fingers kind of time. But officials are bonded, and we are required as officials to have a bond, an insurance bond. And if this is an occasion where the negligence was either so blatant as to cause harm and a loss to the taxpayers of Anderson County, and whether that was accidental or failure to understand the process or just plain old-fashioned lack of understanding and common sense on how to take care of that transaction, or whether it was intentional. Those are things that I don't know. But is it possible to make a claim against that bond for what happened on this particular transaction because the failures are so egregious? And so that's what I'm asking for, is that authorization just to have those conversations. If you think it's something that you would like to consult with the law director regarding, does this have legal ramifications and it needs to be dealt confidentially, I can handle it that way. That would be up to the law director on that. But I think it's worthy of a conversation to see, is there a way to recoup those funds because of the sheer failures of this purchase?
Commissioner Meade?
Well, first of all, you have and always have had full authority to speak to the county's insurance company about anything you want to. It doesn't require any blessing from this body. Also, when you start talking about bringing in outside attorneys with expertise in real estate law about possible remedies, that usually means that we would be suing somebody. You have full authority right now to do what you want to do. You also had full authority during the time we bought that building to have the building inspected and certified and looked at, and that didn't happen. Now, probably the Board of Commissioners should have made it happen anyhow, but because you're the department that takes care of all the grounds and buildings, you're specifically in the contract would have authority over those buildings once a purchase agreement was being looked into. And so, anyhow, so that's basically, that's my concern. You have and do have full authority to talk to the insurance company about any kind of claim or possible things that are going on. And so it doesn't take any approval or authorization by this committee. And I'm leery about hiring outside attorneys. If we can find some kind of remedy, or there's something that clearly covers this, that's covered by one of our insurance things, I'm all for looking into that. Absolutely, I'm all for looking into that. But I don't know that it's gonna, if it requires, $100,000 to pay some attorney to take it on for his project this next coming year, I would be against it.
And just to address the chairman, I have no, if you look at my letter, I have no intention of suing anyone. I just asked for your authorization to have a conversation with someone in real estate law. And because the statement was just made, I do need to clarify. I was not a signatory to this contract. In fact, my name is 99.9% of the time included on all documents. On this document, this contract, my name was excluded. And in fact, the agreement was signed and executed before it even went to the purchasing committee in May. And so the first opportunity I had to do anything was when, after the sale went down, and for the first time, I was issued an invitation to be on site. At that point in time, just my layman's eyes, I noticed issues, and I immediately asked Roger when I saw extension cords plugged into the fuse box. I said, we're getting the fire marshal in here ASAP before the first senior citizen walks in here. And that began a series of issues. So it was not my responsibility to inspect the building. Had I been a signatory to the contract, had it taken place in a time where I could have abided by the 30 days, this wasn't even approved. And I'm happy to put a timeline for commission together. This was not approved, and the clock had run out on any ability for me to act as the county mayor. So I don't want to be defensive about it, but
You are.
I didn't have a responsibility, and when an error of that magnitude is made, I do want to defend myself.
That's very evident.
Could you clarify about that it was signed before it was ever approved?
It did
In
not go to
purchasing?
the purchasing committee until May 8th at 4:30 PM. And the agreement was executed on April the 20th of 2017.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sort of have the same feelings as Commissioner Mead. I don't see any reason to hire an outside attorney. The mayor, you're free to conduct yourself in the rules of your office, but I don't see a point in hiring an outside attorney. We have a good real estate attorney right here on the payroll already.
Commissioner Anderson.
I just had a question, so I wasn't on commission when it got purchased, so just to understand, I know researching it, the $600,000 wasn't just for the building. We bought a business, an event business along with it, and then we paid an extra amount for some equipment that was there. So what, obviously it didn't work out for a senior center, but is there something specific that, since you're considering looking at possible remedies, like what was and we bought the property as is, so what's the specific thing maybe that was misrepresented that we bought that, like
Where were the deficiencies?
yeah, and I know we bought it as is, so. And I know the appraisal was based on the business as well, so I didn't know what specifically we're going after. I know it didn't work out as a senior center, but it looks like.
We did not have an appraisal in advance, and what we were given was a document that was presented to a bank for a loan by the seller. And it was based on his income. Obviously, we cannot generate as a county the same kind of income, and I don't think that was ever presented to commission as, we weren't getting into the party event business. It was a way to supplement the operations. We were also presented that there would be a memorandum of understanding that was put in place regarding that business. That did not happen. To my knowledge, unless I missed something, it was never executed or signed. This is my folder of inspections. And since you weren't here, I can send that to you. All of the other commissioners did get this. I have inspections with photographs. I have structural engineers. I have roof inspectors. I have architects. I have mold reports. 2 of those. I have all kinds of deficiencies that are in this folder right here. So those are the deficiencies I'm talking about, that in the carrying out of a contract, and I'll give you an example. When we purchased the property for the Glen Alpine Convenience Center, we did our due diligence on that. We had a survey. We had a title search. We did some core sampling. We looked at the environmental history of the property. Those are things that we should do. And I will note, there were a couple that felt like I was stalling because we were doing that. But as someone who is charged with the custody of the property, and I was put in charge of that particular contract, I was going to follow through with that. And I know several of commissioners, that's what they wanted. They wanted to make sure that that happened. Those things should have happened here, and they did not.
The memorandum of understanding that you mentioned, was that not signed by the property owner, or was that an agreement with the owner to continue the business?
There were a whole set, I'd have to dig that. It's been a very long time since I looked at that. And I had a personal conversation with Mr. Farley on that as well. Some of that I don't believe he was ever intent upon agreeing to, and he was open about that. So I'm not a party, I wasn't a party to those negotiations at all. But the important part of it was that there was a presentation that he would not go into, he would not compete with the county. And he did. And I have not, I mean, I'm not saying anything. I mean, those were presentations that were made here at the committee level. And they weren't by the seller. So if he never signed an agreement, then he obviously had an intent to open up another business, which he did. So that was all part of the presentation process.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Meade.
I do want to point out that there's a lot of times, it's a routine thing that purchase agreements get signed, okay? But they're always subject to, that they're conditional upon the approval of the full commission. And so the purchase does not become binding until the commission actually makes a final vote on it. And so I think it's important to understand that there may have been an agreement of some kind that was done in May, but until it was voted on by the full commission, Jay, I see you shaking your head.
The purchase agreement was approved by this body.
Yeah.
The reason the MOU's not in place is because the seniors wouldn't sign it.
Yeah.
That's simple. If she'd have picked up the phone or sent me an email, I'd have told you all the answers to the question. But she didn't. The MOU was out there. I presented you a draft copy of it. People had issues about the non-compete. I had concerns about it. My concerns came true. He went in business right up on the hill here doing the same exact thing. There's a whole list of things that would have cleared up this issue. Donations coming through the finance department. That didn't happen. The seniors doing the events, they decided they didn't want to do those. That went out the window. The seniors were the first not to sign the MOU. It wasn't Mr. Farley, it wasn't the county. And all those documents were presented to this body. That purchasing agreement was approved before it was ever signed.
The
The sale was approved, the purchase by the county was approved separately before we ever closed on that property.
I'll pull up those MOU files and
I'll
distribute
give it
that.
to you right now.
The property inspection is an important issue because Section 13, this document, contract was signed on April the 20th. And Section 13 of the contract says buyers shall have the right, that's Anderson County, to inspect and approve all aspects of the property, including without limitation, the physical condition for a period of 30 days, the inspection period, commencing with the acceptance of this contract. If for any reason whatsoever buyer is not completely satisfied with all aspects of the property, physical, financial, market, or otherwise, buyer shall have the right to terminate this contract at buyer's sole and absolute discretion by notice to the seller prior to the expiration of the inspection period. Meaning this clock was ticking before it ever was approved by the purchasing committee and then full commission. That's the period I'm talking about where we should have done an inspection, we should have had an organization come in or an independent agency who would have noticed these problems, who would have found these problems, and raised the flag for Anderson County, and we could have either terminated the contract or put it on hold, and that would have enabled us to renegotiate the price with the seller. And the seller agreed to that. But that's where I'm saying there was a failure, and the signatory to the contract did not make that happen and should have made that happen. And maybe there's an opportunity to make a claim. So.
I can tell you, what kind of claim are you talking about? First of all, I wrote that provision, okay? It was approved by this body. Who did you have in mind should have inspected this building?
The buyer.
One of the county commissioners or the person that's in charge of building and grounds
Before
in
this
this
gets out
county?
of hand, just address the chairman.
No,
please.
I'm asking, who should, we sign agreements and approve agreements all the time, but the individual departments are in charge of executing those agreements. Catherine Ajmiri and the mayor sign purchasing contracts all the time. They don't do the performance of that. I want to know, who did she think should have inspected that? Because I wrote that provision. Did she want one of our county commissioners to do it? That's the question. Who should have done that inspection? Because that document was here for months. There's also a provision that allows us to cancel that contract for other reasons. That's the question. There was plenty of chances for anybody to walk. I can't tell you the number of inspections of people went through that building. And none of this was raised ahead of time. It could have been taken care of. People sat back and waited to strike at a later time. Unfortunately, it was election season.
Mr. Chairman, no department head was listed on this contract. And if that is the case, then that department head should have been listed on the contract and should have been a signatory to the contract. And these issues are not being raised lightly. This was May 3rd, 2017, and I'm only responding to continued concerns and comments by commission about how we're going to make the taxpayer whole for the loss on the building. I'm saying I'm not a lawyer. There's misfeasance, there's malfeasance, there's nonfeasance. Those are a failure to perform a duty. And when someone signed this, a commissioner signed it and took responsibility as an agent and identified themselves as the buyer. That individual took responsibility. And I will say, I did learn just recently, our department head did raise concerns, and she was told to be quiet, and she was not told to be quiet by me. She was told to be quiet, to shut her mouth. I'm sure in fear of funding or her job, she probably did keep her mouth shut, and she did not tell me that until Christmas this year. So that is an issue. It is an issue.
Okay. I don't think you're going to get a motion of support, but I think, it's quite evident that you can actually do this
Sure.
upon your own.
I've heard that tonight, so I'll just, having made you aware, I'll just pursue that information on my own.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Next is MOU Oak Ridge General Sessions Court. Is that you, Commissioner McCamey? Or?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
To approve the MOU at Oak Ridge General Sessions Court?
Yes.
You want to explain that, please?
Well, basically, it's asking the city of Oak Ridge to do what the private act says that they would do, which, and I quote, "Cases arising in Division 2 of the General Sessions Court of Anderson County, Tennessee shall be heard in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, subject to the city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee providing adequate courtroom and office facilities for the judge and support staff." And basically, we're doing that to the tune of $800,000. Just recently that we remodeled a building for them. Prior to that, we paid in about $525,000 for a 10-year lease on a piece of property that we should not have paid for, but we did. So we've got, over $1 million now that we spent when the city of Oak Ridge was responsible for it. And we spent over $1 million of county taxpayers' money on something that we shouldn't have spent it on. And what I'm asking is the city of Oak Ridge to pay us back the $800,000 to the tune of $40,000 for 20 years or $80,000 for 10 years, and to pay 25% of the utilities on the building and 25% of any major maintenance in the future. And my motion is to recommend that to the full commission.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion. I brought up those concerns years ago
You did.
about the fact that the law very clearly says that the city of Oak Ridge is supposed to supply the building for the court and the staff. And instead, they've slowly rolled it over to the county covering most of the cost.
Right.
Any other discussion? All in favor, support
Aye.
of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I've got 2 noes, is that correct?
I voted no.
Okay. Yes?
Yes.
Yes? You get vote aye? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, got 2 noes. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, just one,
Yes.
this is probably up to the maker of the motion. Robert, one thing I left out of that may be relevant, you may want it in or not, is the fact that we rented space in the DARC for their senior center for $1 for several years. I don't know if you want me to add that to it or not, but that's up to you.
No, I think they're very much aware of that. We let them use the thing, like I said, for $1 and paid the utilities. We also offered to give them the building and the
Yes.
property
Yes, sir.
for
It was in-
$1 at
it
the
was
end
in
of that.
It was in the lease
that
that I
lease.
drew up.
And they chose not to do that, but yet we turned around and put $800,000 in it, and,
So you're okay with it as is?
yeah, I'm fine with
Thank
the
you.
MOU as the way it is.
That was 5 ayes, 2 noes. Next is property purchase 96 Mariner Point Drive, requested by Commissioner McCamey.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to defer action on that until next month.
Okay,
Operation being next month.
since how you was the requester, that's what we'll do. Senior Center discussion, requested by Commissioner Scott.
Just wanted to give you some information on some research that I've been doing. One of the things that's bothered me over the past few months and actually during Christmas is every time the senior center is brought up for discussion, We get a group of people that either go to the local radio station, the local newspaper. Now it's going over to the local television stations in Knoxville that report for our area over how the commissioners are not getting a piece of property for the seniors, and they don't care, and they should all be voted out. It's pretty unfortunate that it's gotten to that point. Some people will tell you that what's reported in the newspapers and/or the media itself is just about 10% of what the true discussion is, and it's always one-sided. I've given you some information on what's on their website as to what their mission statement is, saying that they coordinate with other local agencies, organizations, businesses, churches to provide the needs for those that are 60 years of age or plus in Anderson County. That the office provides information, assistance, and referrals, outreach programs, reassurance, and other direct services to assist the elderly. It also tells you that they've got a point for their Office on Aging as well as the Senior Center and different programs that they offer. Part of the controversy is that the seniors are making meals almost on a daily basis for people to come over and have a lunch, that they want to provide a meal. I've given you information on other senior centers in the surrounding area, along with contact information, showing you how much they charge, either for a meal and/or their classes. Some of them are brown bag lunches, such as in Oak Ridge. It's a requested donation of $3 for a bagged lunch where they'll give you a sandwich, chips, piece of fruit, and carton of milk, to which you have to reserve that at least a day ahead of time. The meals that are being provided over at the Anderson County Senior Center, in one of the posts on Facebook, they put down that lunch was yummy. It was sausage stuffed mushrooms, fresh cranberries, a seven veggie slaw, chicken. I mean, it just goes on with fruit and cake and coffee and so on and so forth. And it's all free of charge. I've suggested to the director previously that perhaps you should marry up with one of the churches or even a few of the churches in the county itself and provide these services in different areas where, rather than bringing the people to the center of Clinton for a meal, that you go out to them. Utilize some of the churches that have got larger kitchens and larger facilities to be able to provide for them. The response was, well, no. They want to stay where they're at. In budget, in the end of June 2018, we were all presented with books. And it was an annual report of what the Senior Center and the Office on Aging provides for the seniors. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of different classes, and whether it's massages and nail painting or crocheting lessons and guitar lessons. They don't charge anything for any of those services. Yet they're coming back to commission again, asking us to pay for yet another facility. In that stack, I've also given you some of the headlines of their local newspapers. Our seniors want a senior center in Clinton. Listen to the Anderson County, our Anderson County commissioners listen to our seniors. Some of the recent posts that have been made by the director is that she doesn't want them to be located in Clinton. She wants to be located in Anderson County. Anywhere you go in the area, you're still in Anderson County. No one's calling it a Clinton Senior Center. On the final page, you can see that there's 12 different locations. Starting out from 125 Leinert Street in Clinton is where the original Office on Aging was located. It was back in January of 2015 that the director of the senior center, as well as the head of the Office on Aging, came to us and said, we need a place. We need a place that's safe. We need a place that's accessible for seniors to come to get aid. They were located at 125 Leonard Street. There were stairs that they had to climb, and the office and areas were small. And we said, okay, we can try and help find something. Commissioner McCamey had actually stepped forward and said, I'll take this task. I'll take the front load of it, and I'm going to see if I can help them find something. That was per one of the quotes you made in a local newspaper. And that's why every time there's been a property that's been proposed, it's been through Commissioner McCamey, because he's continued to work on that. You can see that there's different locations that have been suggested. In fact, the Armory was suggested way back in early 2015 at one point. And at that time, they said, sure, that would be a great location. They'd spoken to the city was willing to accommodate for them to be at the Armory. They would help them expand the bathrooms. They would help them create a kitchen. In fact, the director had told me back then that she thought it was great. I said, well, keep in mind, you're going to have to close that facility during the month of July because of the fair. And she said, Teresa, I don't get a vacation ever. I'm inviting it. And in fact, they would be able to go to one of the local churches to hold their facilities there, and/or the city of Clinton was even offering their gymnasium at the community center so that they would be able to continue to get their grant money from the federal government as well as the state. So for people to continually go to the local media and say, they're not helping us, they hate us, they're not doing anything, it's not my job. I don't believe it's anybody on commission to go out and try to find a suitable piece of property in a suitable location in the county itself and take it upon themselves to say, yep, this has got good flooring, it's ADA compliant, it's structured engineer well, that the roof is fine, et cetera, et cetera. None of us are real estate agents. I would suggest that to the seniors themselves, that they may look to a realtor and ask them to help find a place that's suitable for them. But in the meantime, we're getting grief from people in our own districts, let alone throughout the whole county, saying whether they want it or not. For me, people are stepping forward and saying they don't want it. I live in Oak Ridge. We've got a huge facility. It took them 5 years to come up with that facility, to create that building. And it's because they had a senior advisory committee, 11 people on the committee, that worked together as a team and went to different senior centers to see what they provided, and they worked out a plan. They did a full presentation to City Council, and City Council decided, yep, we'll go ahead and build this on our own property. And in the city of Oak Ridge, we pay taxes. Our taxes went up, but it's to benefit the senior center. The senior center there is open 7 days a week. Ours is open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m., I believe. Closed on Saturdays, closed on Sundays, closed on holidays. They need to stop and look and compare. Look at the other places, and rather than going to the media and saying, well, Scott County's got one, you know, all these other counties have one, they're providing for their seniors, give them a call. Check it out. I did. They're charging. They're charging for meals. They're charging for classes. Scrapbooking classes, trivia games are free in one place. If you want to learn how to use a smartphone or a tablet, you're going to have to pay a fee. You want to go to Dollywood, you're going to have to pay. It would be great for everything to be free. It would be great for all the meals to be free. But the size of the meals that they're getting, I don't get that at Thanksgiving. I don't provide it for my neighbors. I don't provide it for anybody else for free. In 2017, we granted a pay raise for the director. Those funds were to come out of the donations from the seniors' code, from their GL code. Period. If the money wasn't there, then there's got to be cuts in that department or in that particular code. And if it means that they can't make up the funds to give her a pay raise that year, so be it, she doesn't get one. It's not up to county commission to take care of that tab either. I'd like to see us get an advisory committee rather than a knee-jerk reaction of every time the commissioner finds a property that's available and we have to make a decision right now, tonight, because it's going on the market tomorrow. Stop. Stop. I'm going to keep voting no until something comes across that's been checked out, that's been proven that it's feasible to the county and/or the seniors. I'm going to keep voting no. And I'm going to stress to others to vote no until something feasible and proof has come across. And I'm only suggesting that an advisory board be created. They look at different ways to fund it and stop assuming that it's going to be the county that's going to pay for it. The local newspaper has an article that there's a free veterans breakfast set for January 11th. It's being sponsored by Benchmark Physical Therapy. They've got a musician, they've got speakers. There's volunteers that are working at the project or at the event. February, there's a free breakfast for the veterans on the 8th, sponsored by the Clinton Lions Club. And it goes on for several months. Why can't the seniors get together and ask for a sponsor and somebody to come and speak and perhaps provide their meal for them if they want it for free? In that report that they gave us, they said that they're getting food that comes from Second Harvest. That's great. Again, marry up with one of the churches. Rather than making people come to you clear across town, go to them and provide. They're saying they don't have enough space to do a lot of the functions, a lot of the events. You've got space. There's a lot of space there. There's 2,400 square feet. Of that facility, approximately a quarter to a third is taken up by a kitchen. No. Utilize the space that you've got for the services that you want to provide and charge a fee. But I'm requesting that a panel be drawn up.
Any comments, discussion, motions? Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, there is an advisory committee, and it's required under the Older Americans Act, and so that committee does exist. And in fact, it was that committee that initially came to me and filled up my office and also approached Commissioner McCamey about being the only county that did not have a senior center to go along with their Office on Aging. And I just want to take a moment, and maybe it's just sometimes it's just a failure of understanding or lack of communication, but the Anderson County Senior Program does not have a big budget that provides meals for seniors. All of that is the most generous labor of love from people in this community that you have ever seen. And I challenge anyone, whether they're a citizen or you, to go there. I mean, I myself have taken big cans of beans, and they say they need 7 cans of beans to do this meal. There are so many people in this community that provide all of that food. All of those meals are through donations through Food City. It's just a never-ending process of giving. And they do accept donations. And in fact, if you look at the money that comes in, a lot of that is $2 a time, $3 at a time. And so it's not as if Anderson County is writing a check to feed people for free. It's coming in, the hands in there are putting it together, and it is feeding people, and they do accept donations. One of the reasons a group of people in the community, and I was a big advocate for this, putting together a 501c3, is because so many people believe in the importance of seniors and senior health and senior well-being. And if you could talk to the folks who have talked about committing suicide and how that place has become their family and has changed their way of life, some of the programs in there, also through the federal government. Those are some of the people that work there actually being paid through a jobs program that helps train senior adults to get back into the workforce and take care of themselves. A lot of those things are happening there. I advocated for the 501c so that they could get grants and things that government cannot get for them, so that they could be more independent and self-reliant and not have to come to you. And in looking at Commissioner Scott's write-up on the buildings we have looked at, we can definitely, a building was purchased by commission, but it's going to take an awful lot to bring it up to speed. The only reason any seniors have continued to ask for a location, and I think they've come up with a good plan that solves the county's equity problem. It addresses the deficiencies, puts us back into the positive on the books, is because they know that commission is unlikely to fund what it would take to bring that building up to compliance for a senior operation or for anything that is a government operation other than something like a warehouse or motor pool or garage where we're not kicked into that bringing it up to the modern building code standards. So in their defense, it's crowded, and if you visit there, you see that it's crowded. You see that it is, there's not room to have any kind of separation. So I do have to defend them, and if you're there and you see the community support they have, you would understand that in terms of the meals.
Thank you. Commissioner Smallwood.
I'd just like to mention, I'm the vice chair of the Senior Advisory Board in Oak Ridge.
Come on up, Bob, so everybody can hear you, please.
Again, I'm vice chair of the Senior Advisory Board in Oak Ridge. We worked for well over a year, 2 years, probably close to 2 years, in looking at different options for our senior center in Oak Ridge. We developed criteria and applied those criteria to each facility, each option we looked at. We worked very closely with the city of Oak Ridge, with the city manager. We knew we had his support to eventually do something, and we ended up with a very, very nice facility. It was not cheap. It's over $2 million for that building, but if you get a chance, stop down and see it. It's a beautiful building, and they've got great programs going on. But I would argue for, as Commissioner Scott said, for an advisory board, and I guess you already have one, Mayor? Yeah, and I think if the advisory board can really take a look at the options and develop criteria in examining the different options, they can be a big help in something like this. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Dave Conrad, 7 Wycliffe Place, Clinton. I am on the advisory council for the Office on the Aging, and in the past have been chair of that committee. A large part of what that committee does is work with people in the community to support these dinners that is given by the center in identifying what food needs to be purchased and provided at what time, and all the details on all of those large meals. There is no line item in the budget, county budget, for the senior center or the Office on the Aging for food, period. Even the water and the coffee in that center is donated. A lot of the churches, the credit unions in the county provide donations. As a matter of fact, the refrigerators and freezers that the center uses in large part were donated by Federal Credit Union. And the accusation that the seniors are not working with other individuals in the community to support that center is just not accurate. As a matter of fact, the grants that the director works under specifically states that she cannot charge for the services that she provides. These other senior centers that do charge do not work under a AAAD grant. They work under a city grant or some other funding. And usually it's the city and the county that funds that. That's the reason why they have to charge for it, because the city or the county won't provide all of it or 100% of it. So some of the information is inaccurate, and the senior center does, and the Office on the Aging does work with a whole lot of community support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say one last thing? There was a committee that was put together prior to the purchase of 205, and I was not invited to be a part of that committee, but there were commissioners that did serve on that committee as part of that purchase, and they did meet and make recommendations.
Commissioner McCamey?
Anderson County Senior Center is open to all of Anderson County, which includes Oak Ridge. The Oak Ridge Senior Center, they take people 65 and over.
55.
55.
They told me 65. Okay, but ours is 60 and up. We've got 9,500 people over age 65 in the rural part of the county outside of Oak Ridge. Oak Ridge has 5,500, but we've got 43 that are members from Oak Ridge that belong. Another thing is that we get over $100,000 a year in grant money to operate the senior center. So there's very little county taxpayers' money that goes into the operation of the center. I don't know what the total budget is. Do you know, Ms. Frank?
Actually, it's more along the lines of 65,000. It seems like when we first started, I think there've been a couple times where they've had some excess funds that they've allocated to us, but I think that's closer to the accurate number. But I'd have to go look that up.
But we get two different grants, one from the state and one from the federal government. And, that's what we were operating under before we actually had a senior center. We had a building, but it wasn't a senior center. There was no activities went on there. It was just the Office on Aging. And that's when we got into the senior center business, and the first building that we found that we thought was adequate was where we are now. And we attempted several times to, get something bigger and better, and it always falls through. And I can't believe that anybody would say that this properties that we've looked at have not been vetted, because we've discussed this for going on 4 months now, since the church made us an offer on the Mariner Point property. The Mormon church up above the interstate, that fell through. They never did respond back to our offer that we made on it, and that one fell through. But if there's another piece of property somewhere that's you know, in the neighborhood of 7,500 to 8,000 square feet, I'd be glad to look at it. I'm not dead set on this one piece of property, but we cannot continue to operate and do what we need to do with 2,400 square feet.
Commissioner Shaw?
Ed made the comment during one of our meetings, our recent commission meetings, that there's two different meetings going on. You've got operations and you've got budget that's been discussing the properties or potential properties. We've not had, on budget, we've not had a formal presentation made from the city of Clinton regarding the armory. One of the big arguments during our commission meeting was that it's a lot, the space is a lot. Well, you can always shut a door, create a partition and say, don't go over there. The city of the city of Clinton has offered to sit down and negotiate modifications to that building as well. It's in the center of the county. It makes sense to at least look at that. But then again, like I said, I would suggest that a committee get together or be put together, not of all seniors who attend the facility that we have right now, but a conglomerate. Look at the city of Oak Ridge as to how they chose to make the 11 members on their panel. They've got their bylaws, and they meet once a month, not once a day or twice a week at any given time, but they're scheduled to meet once a month. They have regular meetings. I'm just tired of knee-jerk reactions. I'm tired of being told, but we've got to get this place right now. That's what happened with 205 Main. And in fact, at 205 Main, County Commission agreed to spend $15,000 for tables, chairs, dinnerware, Christmas decorations, appliances, cooking equipment, et cetera, that was supposed to be valued between $35,000 and $40,000. One of the things that's bothered me about the property over at Faith Promise that's been proposed is, but it includes all the tables and chairs. We've already got tables and chairs. I mean, so that's why I'm saying with an advisory committee, at least they'll be able to look at all of this and say, this is what it includes, this is what it doesn't include, and this is where we've negotiated. I just don't think it's right to make continual knee-jerk reactions. The property that was over on Offutt Road, the school, was an ideal location. Well, there were some areas that if you stood too long, you may fall through the floor. I had made a comment during that meeting that it was not an appropriate location. It had a gravel parking lot. It would probably hold 30 to 40 vehicles. There were stairs. There were windows that needed to be replaced, et cetera. And I was told, no, you're wrong. Maybe the Kmart building, and we went on and on. But I had looked at that property prior for the Teacher Supply Depot. So rather than driving by a piece of property and saying, that's the place we need to do it, let's make a phone call and present it to commission. No. I want a real study done by a group of people, pros and cons, and then how they're going to pay for the property. There was an article in this recent Clinton Courier that said that Senator Randy McNally would pay give us $315,000 towards the property. That's the first I'd ever heard of it. But it's in the paper, so it must be true. Back to the 10%. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Commissioner McKenna. One more time, yeah.
Representative Reagan has said, and he said that we could make that public, that in February, he is submitting money for a portion of that, the cost of a facility that we could use for the facility. I mean, it'll be for the senior center, but that a portion of it or all of it could be earmarked for a facility. He gave us a figure of somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. But he can't submit that until February when the legislature's back in session. But he, you know, he and Senator McNally, Speaker McNally, I think have a pretty good track record of bringing state funds into the county. And I'm confident that that will happen. The other thing about vetting, this has been to the Budget Committee. I think the mayor was challenged by the Budget Committee to come up with a list of pros and cons of the Armory versus the church. And she's been before the Budget Committee 3 times and to the Operations Committee 3 times with pros and cons. I don't know how much more vetting there's been. We've paid for and received an inspection, an appraisal, and the only thing we lack right now, I guess, is the survey, should we elect to purchase that property. But it's had an inspection, and it's had an appraisal. But I don't know what else, and I have said before, if anybody has any questions, call the mayor. If she can't answer your question, she'll find an answer. She'll get the answer for you. But I don't see any reason why that anybody would stand and say this property hasn't been vetted. I mean, it's been before this committee 3 times. We even forwarded it to the full commission to purchase the property at our last meeting, which was voted down in the full commission. But it's been to the Budget Committee 3 times. I don't know what else we need to do. I don't know what other information is needed or wanted. I mean, you know, anything that I could help answer. We've got a ADA, the ADA committee's meeting tomorrow at 2:30 at the church to look at any ADA concerns. Church will be open. Any commissioner that wants to stop by and look at it and see what the committee does about that, you know, you're welcome to be there. It's going to be open tomorrow at 2:30. So, like I said, I don't know of any other reason why that we would need anything else vetted. I mean, if Commissioner Scott has a question, you know, just get with the mayor. She'll answer your question.
Anything else? I want to take time to read this letter. Last Operations Committee meeting, Commissioner Jameson made a motion, and it was approved from this committee to offer $450,000. But the mayor and myself, as operations chairman, went and spoke with the people there about how the cost was, you know, how they came up with that price. And I think everybody here's got that letter in front of them. I'm going to go ahead and read it for the folks at home. It says, Mayor Frank, thanks for taking time today to discuss the Marion Point building. We're grateful for the insight that you provided. Here's a little more insight into why we landed where we did on the cost. And this is from Aaron Goin, the Executive Pastor of Operations for Faith Promise Church. In 2013, when we acquired the assets of New Life, we actually did not have a purchase price established. Since we were merging with their church, we took on their loan. That is likely the value you all see when you look at other documents. However, it was a merger and not a purchase. Since then, we have put $212,830.75 in building improvements into that facility. This does not include the labor and improvement completed by our volunteers. It also does not include general maintenance costs we have incurred to maintain the building. Lastly, this does not include any part of the 3 acres that we obtained after the initial merger, nor does it include any property appreciation over the time we have been there. I hope this helps clarify that not only is $500,000 well below the appraised value of the property, it is below the measurable cost we have in the building. Please let me know how else I can help with this. Aaron Goin, Executive Pastor of Operations.
This past week, you mean you can't hear me?
Well, I can, but not the people at home.
Last week, I took the opportunity to call Mayor Burton and ask for a tour of the Armory. Obviously, I've been in the building on occasions during the fair, but I never really took a look at the full facility. During that time, Mayor Burton and I discussed the fact that evidently we have not done full negotiation with the city of Clinton regarding that building. And I think we're doing a large disservice to Anderson County taxpayers in not doing so. Because it's my understanding from Mayor Burton that they are more than willing to negotiate and heavily negotiate any structural changes that need to be made to the building, any improvements that need to be made to the building, and willing to take on a good portion of the responsibility since the property is owned by the city. So I am going to urge that we step back and take another long, hard look at the Armory facility, because I feel that it can be made into an excellent facility for the senior citizens of this county. There's plenty of room, and, you know, everybody is willing to work with whatever needs to be done to facilitate, you know, the 2 weeks in the summer that would require the fair use of the property. So I'm just going to urge this committee to certainly take that into consideration on any decisions that are made tonight. Thank you.
Anything else before we move on? Commissioner
In regards to the negotiations, I did meet with the city managers. I did report that to the Budget Committee as well as the Operations Committee. In meeting with City Manager Roger Houck, the Roane State facility has a lease. I can get you the exact date. I believe it's through April of 2022, but it's 2022 is their standing lease. The TCAP facility is scheduled to be constructed by the spring of 2021. So I guess they're looking at classes starting in the fall. The city manager did say that and of course, the mayor can't speak for council, just like I can't go and speak for you all as county commission. All of that's subject to your approval and to council's approval. But in speaking with the city manager, he did say that the agreement would look like the agreement for Roane State, and then also the agreement that existed for the Anderson County Schools. And that would be $1 plus us maintaining responsibility for maintenance and utilities. And then if there were issues that came up or there needed to be capital improvements and repairs, that would be expected to be a 50-50 contribution. So if you want to look at that further, I'm happy to ask the city manager to get something more firm from council. But again, Roane State does have an agreement, and they're in front of us on that agreement at this point in time. I shared with the Budget Committee and then also Operations, the main issue with the Armory is it's bigger than we need, and the utilities are more than we're currently paying in lease right now. So if that is something that Commission, if you see value in upgrading a building that will not be our asset, you need to look at it in terms of that's lease. However you want to call it, it's still cost of using a facility that we do not own and will not recoup that cost. And then it would require additional contribution for just the heat and air and water. There are, it is a large maintenance as well, and I can get that data from the city of Clinton on what those maintenance issues are and with the sewer and the toilets and stuff in there, so. I'm happy to go back.
Commissioner Meade?
Actually, I have something else I want to address after this.
Anything else on the subject?
Well, yeah, and the mayor stirred my thoughts a little bit when she said that she could go back and the maintenance cost is high, the utility cost is high. But the facility is more than adequate space, which would be good for the seniors. The cost would be about the same as we have now, I'm assuming, from what you just said. So, the cost for utilities.
No. The cost on the utilities, I can send that back out. The cost on the utilities are more than we're even paying in lease a year. They are, I mean, it's a 17,000 square foot facility, and right now we're in a 2,400 square foot facility. The other facility we're looking at, which would be ideal back when I was looking at a grant, was max topping out at 10,000 square feet.
Yeah, the utilities is more than what we're paying out in rent.
Yes,
You-
yes.
And I was going there.
Yes.
That,
Mayor, but one of the things that have you've taken into consideration, the very high-tech equipment that's in that facility right now. I mean, there are computers, there are, I don't even know what they were, but there was a lot of very high-tech equipment in that building that is being used by the school that I'm sure is really escalating the cost of the utilities.
Yes, and I did explain that to both budget and operations, because I looked at a window of time when they were not operational. And then also you can get a good gauge for, they're not always there, and they are off for Christmas holidays and breaks. So you can look at that window and they're still, I mean, at the end of the day, you're heating and cooling 17,000 square feet.
Well, that's
So-
true. But I didn't want to insinuate that you had not talked with the city, but I was just given a very strong indication that there was a willingness to really negotiate whatever the maintenances, the renovations, et cetera. Because evidently, the city really wants the seniors to have that property. So that's all the
Sure.
point that I was trying to make.
Mayor?
Yes.
You and the city manager went through the Armory with an architect, and they came back with a figure of 1.4 million to bring it up to standard, and the county would be responsible for half of that, which would be 700,000.
Well, I think this is where, and I don't want to get in the middle of anything here. I think you have some statements. I don't think you have a vote yet of city council on
Right.
what that would actually look like. So you have some different ideas of, that's bringing it up to speed. Does that all have to be done at one point in time? No. Are the air units there still operating? Yes, they are. But how old are they? They're 20 to 25 years old. Are they going to go down, sooner rather than later? Yes. Those are all things that, yes, to walk in that facility, we may not have to replace the HVAC on day one. But again, we're not looking until, best hope would be 2021 timeframe or 2022. When will they go down? When will they have to be upgraded? There are some moisture issues in there. You can see that, for instance, all of the ceiling tiles in the area that has ceiling tiles are all sagging. That's all due to humidity and moisture that's been in there and from some of the roof leaks. Could we make it work? Absolutely, we can make it work. Do I think it's the best value? No, I don't. I don't want to pay to upkeep a 17,000 square foot building and pay for heating and air, but that's my opinion. And if you ask me my opinion, that's what I would say. So that's just opinion.
well, I didn't get to finish, Chairman. Everybody took over. And I agree with the mayor. It's not the best purchase, but for a little more money than we're spending now, we could have a lot larger space for a time to give us room to build and design and decide what we're going to do with 205 and decide how we're going to build something new for the seniors. a little bit more money, yes, but we don't have to pay a large payment towards a new facility that's already built. But, and I agree, yeah, it's not the best buy right now, but it will give us some time possibly to build our resources, build our plans, and either work on 205 or something different, or build it over here, over behind the, where the old ambulance service used to be or something on that property. We have other properties we got, but anyhow, that was my point.
Commissioner Jameson.
I wish that building was what we needed. 17,000 square feet. The ceilings in there are as high as this room here. What is this, about 20 feet? 18 or 20 feet?
They're higher.
Yeah. That building is 70-something years old. It was an armory. It has single pane glass in it. You just can't shut the door and say, all right, we're not going to heat or cool this part of it. You either heat or cool the whole blame building. And the city of Clinton, it sounds like a real good deal. It is a good deal if you're willing to pay 50% of all new things built into that over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years. So the bill, I wish it would work. The other thing is, we're not able to get that building for at least 2 years. They're under contract. Also, there's about 3 or 4 weeks in July, the fair gets the building. So we would have to find someplace else to go. So, in other words, it's not just like a cut and dried thing, this looks good, da-da-da-da-da. I wish it would work. I do not think it would, monetarily, I don't think we'd save any money out of it. Plus, we would be at a disadvantage because we would not be able to use this building for 2 years, plus a month in July, we won't be able to use it. So then our people have got to find, the senior citizens have to find a place to go. So, we can go, I went on a tour, and some of you other went, I think Bob went on this tour. And it's very nice. It's a nice facility. But if you want to bring it in, I know that it's going to cost $1 million or more to bring the armory up. Well, Anderson County would have to pay half of whatever.
That's not been settled.
What?
Negotiations have not concluded from what I've been told.
Well, I talked to the mayor, and I've known him for 40 years, and he said, anytime we do business with the county, as far as, and we've got a good relationship with the city of Clinton, and I hope we keep it. But anytime that it's a deal between the two of them, and it's over property and getting it fixed up, it's 50-50. They're not going to change that. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. We need to move on. National championship is on right now.
And we missed Dr. Sexton's, what they did tonight was trying to keep it a secret, and we were going to be there to dedicate Lake City Middle School gym in his name. So we missed that, but we got things at hand. Commissioner Val went up there and took care of that for us.
Yeah, that'd be a good thing.
Yeah. The next thing was Bryceville Volunteer Fire Department. I'd put that on there, but they had a couple glitches in getting that built, but the mayor went and talked to the appropriate people, and so all that's taken care of now, so they're moving full steam ahead. Next thing is new business, and that was the discussion on the bidding at 205 Main Street. Commissioner McCamey.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we ask our purchasing agent to go ahead and take seal bids on 205 South Main with the intended purpose by the bidders to be included as part of the bid.
I'll second that motion. I'm in favor if somebody wants to buy the building at a reasonable price that can be agreed to by the commission. We should at least know if there's people interested.
Yeah, and they're going to put in there that, what their intended use is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Jameson?
As, Robert, have they said what their price is going to be, they are going to offer?
We don't know what'll happen, but it's open to anybody and everybody.
Oh, so it's not just the.
No, it's not just the one person. It's open to anybody and everybody, so, I hope it's 601,000, so.
Just a thought, and it's totally up to you. Last time you put it out there with no commission to a real estate broker, that's an impairment. No, there's not gonna be a real estate broker wanting to bring a client over here for free. It's totally up to you, but you may see that you add a 3%, a real estate commission in there, you get a lot more activity on this building. That's the first thing that's on, when we post this thing on the website and all the government buildings and all the buildings that the architects go to and the commercial real estate brokers go to, first thing they look at there is, how much money am I gonna make when I find somebody to buy this? They're making nothing unless they negotiate a commission with the buyer. But that's just an idea that chilled some people the last time. And as it looks, I hear these discussions at every meeting I go to. 3% might not be a bad loss comparative to some of the other losses we're talking about. But it's up to you. That they still have the ability to negotiate with the buyer for a commission. But last time we put it out there, there was no commission on the seller's end at all. Thank you.
That's a fine suggestion, to be honest.
It is.
Commissioner Meade?
Yeah, I apologize. I really should have brought up that I wanted to had something I wanted to discuss briefly under old business. Do I have permission to go ahead with some short comments on stuff I've been tasked by the full commission?
Well, let's take care of this motion that
Oh,
we've
okay.
got now first. Do we need an amendment? Any other discussion on the motion as is?
Are you, you're not for having a 3% sales?
Yeah, if an individual bids, we wouldn't be out anything. It's only if a real estate company brings a buyer.
Broker commission is what it is.
But I mean, if Mr. Burge wants to go and submit a bid,
Well, he wouldn't be going through
he wouldn't be going through a real estate broker, so there would be no commission.
No, it would be only for a real estate broker that would be bringing you clients to purchase the building. That's all that would apply to. If the individual shows up and bids, there's no real estate agency. It's an agent working for somebody.
Right.
It's not an individual. It's how they make their money. It's a common practice in the commercial real estate market is to get now a lot of times it's a lot more than 3%. We had a guy on industrial development wanting to charge us 6%. And you may set it at 1 or 2, but that appears to be, and you may want to go 0. That's fine with me, but that did appear to be an impairment last time with a lot of the commercial brokers out of the Knoxville area looking at the sale saying, I'm making nothing over here unless I find a buyer that's willing to negotiate a commission with me. But we're not getting anything from the county we're selling their building for them. But that's the only thought. It's up to you.
So in other words, if Joe's Auto Sales submit a bid, there's no commission.
No, this is for brokers only.
This
real
is for
estate
brokers only that would see it on the market and say, I got somebody that needs a building like that, and then they sell it.
And I don't have a problem with adding that 3% for broker.
But,
As a second, I have no problem amending the motion as such.
okay. Mayor?
If I can ask you some clarification, does that come out of our price, or is that added to the
That would be out of our
potential
price.
buyer?
But yeah.
But it wouldn't be if it was just an individual. It has to be a broker that
Okay.
actually buys and brings somebody in, you know, to
Yeah.
Maybe you could pass it without that, and then let Jay and Catherine, I don't know. I don't know what that does. I mean, I'd have to defer to Jay and his opinion on that. Just in terms of the purchasing laws.
We could pass a contingent on the law
Yeah.
director and the purchasing director working out something, working out the language.
Let me ask you a question. When you enter into a contract with a broker, and somebody calls Bob, does he have to refer him to the broker?
We're not doing an exclusive contract.
Oh.
No, absolutely not. What we would do is if somebody brought us a client to purchase that building and it does sell, we would pay them up to 3% to do that. No, we're not gonna do an exclusive marketing arrangement. That's not smart on our part. What we wanna do is attract the commercial brokers out of Knox County to bring us clients. That's the whole idea there.
And without that, we're not gonna get that, because they're in the business of making money by taking buyers to buy properties. And if they see no commissions available at all, they're just gonna go next.
No, they're still free to negotiate a commission with the buyer.
With the buyer.
But the more common structure is for the seller to at least offer something here. And I think we would see, I'm hoping we'd see some more clients come. Last time, there's very few people even visited it to tour the building. And that tells you something. There's something that's just turning the people off about it. But anyway, that's just an idea, and I'll be glad to work with Catherine on it.
This
Commissioner
motion
Meade.
is sent to the full commission, so we can discuss it again at the commission. if We need to make any fine
We can send it on with recommendation contingent upon the law director and the purchasing director.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I also just wanted to mention that years ago, I sold a house just like that. I will pay a 3% commission to an agent with a qualified buyer, and I sold my house a week later.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We got one no. Old business.
Yeah, some months ago, I was tasked by the county commission, after a recommendation from the mayor, a request from the mayor, to look at if the county can have a little bit more control over the regulation of arms by its employees and contractors. And I was very much amazed to find out that current law allows us to do that. I've talked with the CTAS lawyer, Steve Austin, I've talked with the law director, I've talked with a whole bunch of folks. And it ends up that, believe it or not, the Tennessee law already says the city, county, or town, or municipality, or metropolitan government is expressly authorized to regulate by ordinance, resolution, policy, rule, or other enactment the following. And the first thing listed is the carrying of firearms by employees or independent contractors of the city, county, such, okay? And it specifically is that we have that authority. And the only limitation in the law on that is that we're, in spite of this authority, we're not allowed to regulate the fact that people are allowed to store their arms out of sight and secure in their vehicles in any parking lot that belongs to the county. And so there's no other requirements on that. Now, the key thing is the word regulate. The Tennessee State Supreme Court, in its last ruling on what regulate arms means, this is a quote: "The power to regulate does not fairly mean the power to prohibit. On the contrary, to regulate necessarily involves the existence of the thing or act to be regulated." Then it goes on to talk about how the Attorney General at the time of this case was looking at other things, and the Supreme Court of the state set him straight. So the legislative committee, we don't have to vote on this tonight. The legislative committee already voted unanimously to forward to full commission a resolution that basically says that people with handgun carry permits, in accordance with state law, okay, would be authorized to carry in a number of areas with a bunch of very clear exceptions. School grounds and school offices are covered by another set of law we couldn't violate. That our people will not be allowed to violate any lawful posting that's out there. And the people say, well, why is having a carry permit so important? Well, if they're going to bring the gun around anywhere in public, they have to have a permit by Tennessee law anyhow. The other great thing about the permit system is in order to get a permit in Tennessee, you go through a very extensive background check. You're checked at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, and then they follow up on you the rest of your life. Right now, there are 650, as of the end of December this last year, there are about 650,000 handgun carry permits in Tennessee. There's 8,475 in Anderson County. Now, how many people have you had an adverse event with a person with a handgun carry permit? I went through 3 years of the Tennessee State Safety Department's permit on handgun carry permit holders. I'm not going to go through all the dirty details, but the number one reason people get their permit revoked is that they're late on child support payments. Okay, that's the number one reason. Okay. The other important thing is that I went through 3 years, the 3 current years that they have many, many years, but I looked at the last 3 current years. Handgun carry permit holders are exceptionally law-abiding. In these 3 annual reports, not a single handgun carry permit holder had been convicted of a crime involving illegal use of a gun as far as any kind of an assault or anything like that. I think that's our system of background checks and fingerprinting and going through all that stuff has worked so well. 38 other states accept Tennessee handgun carry permits for people to carry in their states because our system has worked so well. And so I'm just telling you, this is going to be coming before full commission. If you have any questions or concerns about this, please get with me, because the thing that we voted on in the legislative committee is if anything came up that the law director and I look at and say, yeah, that needs to be modified, that'll be modified. In fact, there was a bunch of things I already have notes on that were discussed that we're going to modify a little bit. This will make the courthouse, first of all, the 3rd floor is going to be run just like it has been. It doesn't change the activities on the 3rd floor at all, because the people that want to come to the 3rd floor can only do it if they're specifically authorized under the 1306 law that talks about judicial proceedings. That doesn't change at all. The only thing that changes is other parts of the building, people with handgun carry permits and gone through all the requirements may be allowed to carry concealed in the courthouse, the first 2 floors, the Jolly Building on the second, 3rd, and 5th floors. 1 floor over there is a school board, and so you can't have anybody in a school office building. That's covered under the law. But there's a whole bunch of studies, and I've provided a bunch of information to the law director that have been done through the years that show that making it illegal for the good guys to be armed does not represent a movement in safety or crime prevention. What it does is it makes you a target. These wackos target places where people are not allowed to carry arms. It's almost exclusive that these crazy shootings always happen in places that don't allow handguns. Now, here recently in Texas, there was a guy that tried to take it out with a shotgun on a bunch of people in a church. They were at a point where they were all bowing their heads to pray, and this guy pulled out a shotgun, but he'd been a problem in the past. So there were 2 armed people in the church that were keeping an eye on this guy. When he pulled out a shotgun, 2 guys stood up. One of them was shot and killed. The other one shot the guy dead with 1 shot 6 seconds after he pulled the shotgun out from under his coat. It was stopped in 6 seconds. That's what happens when you have armed people authorized to be in places where these wackos may show up. It could have been 20 or 30 people killed or more in a crowded room with 1 exit with 200, I think it was 247 people in the congregation. That could have been really bad. Instead, a responsible citizen took action. Tennessee permit holders are extremely law-abiding, almost to the extreme. And so I think we need to go ahead. We need to go ahead with this. Like I said, it was unanimously voted in the legislative committee. Thank you for the opportunity.
Anything else coming before this committee? Thank you.